So this is me laying the groundwork for my fairy garden base. So I found these peel and stick moss things at the craft store, and they were perfect for what I was doing, but they were so sticky and annoying. You could barely even peel the backing off without a struggle, but it made it that much more rewarding once I finally did get it all down. The biggest problem I ran into was when I went to buy these, there was only 2 left, but I thought there was going to be a lot more in the pack than there was. And when I went back to see if they had another one, they didn't have it in the same colors. They only had this darker color, so I kind of panicked and hit a wall, so I gave it a break for a few days, and I talked to my mom, and she said, why don't you make a forest so that it has shadows and it doesn't make a difference if it's dark or not underneath? And I was like, wow, that's the best idea I've ever heard in my whole life. So then I tried to look up how to make trees, and I found a way where they had Elmer's glue and they sprinkled the stuff on. And I tried to do that with the scraps of the sticky moss that I put on the board. It didn't work well. So I had that other pack of moss that I just kind of started gluing on with zero rhyme or reason, but just hoping that it'll somewhat resemble a tree. For the trunk of the tree, I used an old bouquet of flowers that I was going to end up putting in the compost bin anyways. And I thought this made it look really natural, and it also made my job easier because it gave off the look of it having branches without me having to do any extra work there. And this really was a pretty messy project. I'm glad I put my cardboard down before I started doing it all. Once I had my trees mostly set, I took these pieces of styrofoam that I had in my bin of, I can't throw this out because I could probably use it for a craft bin, and I figured these would be the perfect base, so I covered them in the sticky moss stuff as well, so that it would blend in nice, of course. I do leave one section uncovered for the time being, but don't worry, I will end up covering it. I just really didn't feel like cutting a new piece at that time. So then I was trying to experiment on how to get the trees to stick, and at first they were giving me a very hard time, and I found it very annoying, but I think it was just because of the sticky moss. So I really had to stab the toothpick thing in, and I don't know if that's actually called a toothpick, so sorry if that's wrong. But once I really stabbed that in there, I was able to just slip the little trees right in, and then they stood perfectly fine. Some of them I did add a little bit of hot glue just to keep it sturdy, but for the most part, they all are in without any other sort of support besides just the styrofoam. And before I put each tree in, I did make sure that the moss was secure enough with some hot glue just in case. And then once I was all set with that, I hot glued the actual styrofoam down to the board. And for a final touch, I took some of the leftover flower stems and put them in the back so it gave the forest more depth when you look at it. I'm so glad I talked this out with my mom and she had this idea because I think it looks so good and I love the progress of the fairy garden so far.